Tonight, the latest developments demand your full attention. And once you hear this, you'll understand why. What we witnessed at Sundance Film Festival this past weekend wasn't just another celebrity appearance gone wrong. It was a masterclass in how quickly things can unravel when image meets reality. And the cracks? They're showing bigger than ever before. Before we dive deep into what really happened in Utah, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now, tap the notification bell, because stories like this, the ones that reveal what's really happening behind the carefully crafted PR campaigns, they don't stay up forever. And here's my question for you. Do you think celebrities should be held accountable when they endorse projects they clearly don't understand? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear what you think about this entire situation. Now, let's get into what actually went down at Sundance, because what the cameras captured tells a very different story than what the PR machine wants you to believe. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry arrived at the prestigious Sundance Film Festival to promote a documentary called Cookie Queens. On the surface, it sounds harmless enough. A feel-good film about young girls selling Girl Scout cookies. Sweet, empowering, all-American. Exactly the kind of wholesome content you'd expect the Sussexes to champion, especially given their vocal stance on protecting children. But here's where things get interesting. And by interesting, I mean deeply problematic. The documentary, which follows several young girls during cookie selling season, has been described by multiple attendees and reviewers as something far more complex and troubling than the Sussex squad wants to admit. Beneath the badges and bright smiles lies an uncomfortable truth about what some are calling exploitation dressed up as empowerment. Let me break down what's actually in this film, because it's crucial to understand why this entire appearance has backfired so spectacularly. The documentary shows parents being required to front thousands of dollars for cookie inventory before a single box is sold. We're not talking about pocket change here. One family featured in the film reportedly struggled to pay in advance for more than 2,000 boxes of cookies. Why? So their daughter could try to win a trip to a camp they otherwise couldn't afford. Think about that for a moment. Parents going into debt so their child can compete for something that should be accessible. Another girl, dubbed the so-called Cookie Queen, racked up massive sales almost entirely online through a website built, managed, and promoted by her parents. The film shows these children being coached to upsell, to charm, to lean into their cuteness, because as the harsh reality goes, cuteness sells. And here's what makes this particularly disturbing. The Hollywood Reporter, one of the most respected trade publications in the entertainment industry, didn't mince words in their review. They pointed out that girls can age out of cookie selling once they're no longer considered cute. Read that again. These children are effectively being trained to understand that their appeal is temporary and transactional. The review went even further, stating that the film's lesson is inseparable from late-stage capitalism. Cuteness, like beauty for older women, becomes a commodity that the possessor can exploit to their advantage. The girls, according to the reviewer, seem to have absorbed that guilt-tripping potential customers as part of the game. So we have a documentary that, intentionally or not, showcases children learning that their value is tied to their appearance and their ability to manipulate emotions for sales. And who decided to enthusiastically endorse this project? The very same couple who has built their entire post-royal brand on protecting children and fighting exploitation. You cannot make this up. But wait, it gets worse. Multiple sources are now reporting that Meghan and Harry bought into this project without actually watching it first. They saw the glossy packaging, heard the words Girl Scouts and empowerment, and jumped on board. One festival attendee who was at the morning screening said it plainly, "I'm not sure the Sussexes understand the film." And honestly, after watching Meghan's behavior throughout this weekend, I'm inclined to believe they genuinely have no idea what they've attached their names to. Let's talk about the red carpet footage, because this is where things get really revealing. Body language doesn't lie, and what we saw from Meghan Markle during her brief interactions with the young stars of this documentary speaks volumes. Watch any clip from that red carpet and you'll see it immediately. Meghan approaches, flashes her practice smile, poses for a quick selfie, and she's gone. No genuine engagement. No sitting down for interviews with these children. No interest in hearing about their experiences or what making this documentary meant to them. In fact, when Deadline wanted to conduct an interview, Meghan reportedly refused to sit with the children. The director had to step in instead. Let that sink in. The woman who executive produced this film, who is using these children's stories to rehabilitate her public image and potentially sell content, wouldn't even sit down for a proper interview with them. The contrast is jarring. These are the same children she's praising publicly, calling their stories inspiring charming and powerful, but when the cameras aren't rolling for a quick photo op, she wants nothing to do with them. And if you think I'm reading too much into this, watch the footage again. Her discomfort around these children is palpable. This isn't someone who genuinely cares about their well-being or their stories. This is someone checking boxes for PR purposes. But here's what really got under my skin. These young American girls have been instructed to refer to Meghan and Harry using their royal titles. Not as Meghan and Harry, their common names, not in the casual American way you'd expect, but as the Duke and Duchess and the Duchess of Sussex. Listen to the interviews with these children. "When I first found out I was meeting the Duke and Duchess," one girl says. Another talks about reading about princesses and kings in books and now getting to meet one in real life. These are American children in America, at an American film festival, talking about American subjects in a documentary about an American organization. And they're being made to use British aristocratic titles like they're meeting actual royalty. The optics are astounding. Here's a couple that left the royal family claiming they wanted freedom, wanted to be independent, wanted to raise their children as private citizens away from the constraints of the monarchy. Yet they're still clinging so desperately to those titles that they're having children in their documentary use them in interviews. You can't have it both ways. You can't leave the institution, trash it repeatedly in interviews and court testimonies, claim you want nothing to do with it, and then insist everyone addresses you with the titles that institution gave you. Now let's address the elephant in the room. The Sundance screening itself was, by all accounts, a disaster. Despite the Sussex squad's immediate damage control claiming the theater was packed and the reception enthusiastic, photographs from inside the venue tell a completely different story. There are images showing massive chunks of empty seats. We're not talking about a few scattered vacancies. We're talking significant portions of the theater that remained unfilled. For context, this is Sundance, one of the most prestigious film festivals in the world, a place where independent filmmakers dream of screening their work, a venue where typically any film associated with names as big as Prince Harry and Meghan Markle would have people lining up around the block, and they couldn't fill the theater. There's even a photograph taken from behind during the screening that's particularly telling. You can see Harry sitting there, and the misery is evident even from that angle. His body language screams discomfort. This is not a man enjoying a triumphant moment. This is someone who knows this isn't going well. But when they're in public for the cameras, it's all performance. Watch the awkward hand-holding. Watch Meghan give Harry the nod when it's time for him to come over for photos. Watch him rush over like he's been given permission to exist in her spotlight. This is the same man who just days earlier was in a British court complaining about being made to be a performing monkey by the royal family. The irony is almost painful to witness. Speaking of that court appearance, let's connect these dots because they matter. Harry spent time in court claiming his life in the royal family was miserable, that he was forced to perform, that everything about that life was awful and degrading. Then, literally days later, he's at Sundance performing for Meghan's benefit in what can only be described as an equally choreographed and arguably more demeaning display. At least when he was working for the Crown, he was doing meaningful charity work, connecting with veterans, supporting causes that actually mattered to him. Now, he's standing awkwardly at a film festival, waiting for his wife to signal when he's allowed to approach, promoting a documentary that appears to showcase the very exploitation of children they claim to oppose. Roya Nika, a respected royal correspondent who has covered Harry for years and watched him work extensively during his time as a working royal, wrote a scathing piece following his court appearance. She pointed out that she has watched him cheerfully perform for the media countless times. She questioned whether his revisionist history about hating royal life is genuine or strategic. She makes an excellent point. Those of us who followed Harry during his working royal days remember a very different man. We saw someone who lit up around veterans, who had genuine chemistry with children during charity visits, who seemed to genuinely enjoy representing his country and using his platform for good. The happy prince who did significant work with wounded servicemen and women, who championed mental health causes, who brought attention to issues like HIV testing and conservation efforts, that person seems to have been completely erased, replaced by this version who claims every moment was torture. It doesn't add up. And watching him now, being led around by Meghan, waiting for permission to speak or move or exist in these public spaces, you have to wonder which version was the real performance. But let's get back to Cookie Queens, because there's another massive issue we need to address. Netflix passed on this documentary. Let that sink in for a moment. Meghan and Harry have a deal with Netflix. They have a first look arrangement where Netflix gets the opportunity to pick up their projects before anyone else. And Netflix, after presumably watching this documentary, said no thank you. The streaming giant that once bet big on the Sussexes, that paid them millions for content, that aired their controversial documentary series, looked at Cookie Queens and passed. That tells you everything you need to know about the quality and message of this film. If Netflix, which has a vested financial interest in making the Sussex deal work, doesn't want to touch it, what does that say? The film is now being shopped around by Woom, an independent distributor. They're still trying to sell it. That's why Harry and Meghan were at Sundance in the first place. This wasn't a celebration of a film they'd already sold and were proud of. This was a desperate attempt to drum up interest in a product nobody wants to buy. And watching Meghan try to spin this in interviews is almost painful. When Variety magazine gave her what can only be described as a propaganda puff piece interview, she couldn't even acknowledge reality. She was asked about With Love, Meghan, her Netflix lifestyle series that has been an objective disaster. It didn't even crack the top 1,000 shows on Netflix. The viewership numbers were abysmal. The reviews were brutal. It was, by any measurable metric, a complete failure. And what does Meghan do when asked about audience appetite for lifestyle programming? She pivots back to Suits, the cable drama she appeared in before meeting Harry. That's her only success story, and she clings to it desperately, talking about how much work went into With Love, Meghan, without ever acknowledging that all that work resulted in content nobody wanted to watch. There's no self-awareness, no acknowledgement of failure, no indication that she's learned anything or plans to adjust her approach. Just the same delusional confidence that if she keeps saying things are great, eventually people will believe her. When asked about returning to acting with a cameo in an Amazon movie, she calls it fun and frames it as part of some grand strategy to uplift and celebrate the entertainment industry. As if she's doing Hollywood a favor by gracing it with her presence. The reality? She's scrambling, throwing things at the wall to see what sticks, calling herself an entertainment executive and trying to insert herself into whatever corner of the industry will have her. But here's what makes the Cookie Queen situation even more egregious. Meghan was a Girl Scout herself. Her mother was her troop leader. She talks about this in the Variety interview, waxing poetic about the experience and how meaningful it was. So either she genuinely doesn't see the problematic elements in this documentary, which raises serious questions about her judgment, or she sees them and doesn't care, which raises serious questions about her ethics. She talks about how the film shows what families are sacrificing to give their daughters opportunities. But she frames sacrifice as noble rather than questioning why families should have to go into debt for their children to participate in what's supposed to be a youth organization. She mentions girls pushing themselves harder than their parents would push them, as if that's admirable in 8- and 9-year-olds rather than concerning. Children that young shouldn't be internalizing pressure to perform and sell and compete at that level. The Girl Scouts organization itself is reportedly furious about this film and the Sussex endorsement. According to sources, they feel exposed and blindsided. This wasn't the kind of attention they wanted. They didn't ask for a documentary that highlights the financial burden on families and the pressure cooker environment of cookie season. One source said they feel thrown into a spotlight they didn't ask for. Another summed it up by saying everything the Sussexes touch turns controversial. And that's not a bad thing if it's intentional, but this clearly wasn't. And that's the core issue, isn't it? Harry and Meghan have shown repeatedly that they don't do their due diligence. They don't think things through. They see an opportunity for good PR, jump on it, and only later realize they've stepped in it again. Remember the Uvalde situation? They showed up at the site of a school shooting for a photo op that even their supporters found tone-deaf and exploitative. Or the time they tried to trademark Royal for their foundation after leaving the royal family? Or the Spotify deal that ended with executives calling them grifters? There's a pattern here, a consistent inability to read the room or understand how their actions will be perceived. And instead of learning from these mistakes, they double down, blame the media, blame the public, and insist everyone else is wrong. The Sundance appearance was supposed to be a moment of triumph, a step toward rebuilding their Hollywood credentials, a chance to show they can still draw crowds and generate positive buzz. Instead, it exposed everything. The empty theater showed they can't draw an audience. The awkward interactions showed genuine connection isn't there. The film itself showed they don't vet the projects they attach their names to. And Meghan's refusal to sit with the children showed what many have suspected all along. This isn't about the causes or the people, it's about the image. There's also the concerning detail about Harry's alleged stalker attending the court proceedings. According to reports, a woman who has been labeled a fixated individual and placed on a police watch list was able to get remarkably close to Harry during his court appearances. But here's the thing. This woman isn't some dangerous criminal. She's a Sussex squad member, a fan who has publicly supported them. She was photographed next to Meghan during their Nigeria trip with no indication at that time that anyone considered her a threat. Yet now she's being used as evidence in Harry's security case. He's pointing to her presence as proof that he needs taxpayer-funded police protection. It's manipulative at best, and at worst it's a cynical exploitation of a devoted fan to make a legal point. If this woman were genuinely dangerous, she wouldn't have been allowed anywhere near that courtroom. Security protocols don't work that way. You don't let actual threats get close and then use them as examples afterward. You remove them immediately. So what we're watching is Harry using a superfan, someone who has shown nothing but support for him and Meghan, as a prop in his legal battle. And that should tell you everything about the lengths they're willing to go to get what they want. As this story continues to develop and more details emerge about the Sundance disaster, one thing becomes increasingly clear. The carefully constructed narrative that Harry and Meghan have spent years building is crumbling. And unlike their controlled Netflix documentary or their friendly podcast interviews, they can't edit real-time public reactions. People are seeing through it. Festival attendees are speaking out. Industry insiders are leaking details. Even publications that have historically been friendly toward them are starting to ask harder questions. The question now is whether they'll actually learn from this or continue down the same path, blaming everyone else for their failures and insisting the problem is with how they're being perceived rather than with their actual choices and actions. Based on everything we've seen so far, I'm not holding my breath for self-reflection. If you found this breakdown valuable, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss future coverage as this story develops. Hit that like button if you appreciate honest analysis that cuts through the PR spin. And seriously, drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think this Sundance appearance marks a turning point, or is this just another controversy they'll weather and move on from? I want to hear your perspective. This is the kind of reporting that matters, not the carefully managed press releases or the friendly puff pieces, but the real examination of what's actually happening versus what we're being told is happening. And I'll keep bringing you that analysis as long as you keep showing up. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.